Thank you so much. And with that motto of digging deep, I think we are ready for our conversation now. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, to you, dear Republica community, for giving us a star in your Republica calendar and for making the time in your busy calendars. Thanks for joining us when we talk about the topic of makers, of change makers, of movers. And when it comes to digital innovations, what keeps us going? What are the challenges? What do we still need? Where are blind spots? You see the title here ahead of us, how digital skills empower the global South African context to drive the global transformation. And a fact that is, every time I read that fact, it's crazy to me. 70% of sub-Saharan Africa's population is under the age of 30. So this is a real powerhouse of a young generation. So much potential when it comes to change, to social change, to economic growth. And when we talk about innovation in a second, inclusive access to digital education and a local tech ecosystem that's driven by the young generations, most of the times by these young powerhouses. And that's something that we will, of course, dig deep in our next session, the next 60 minutes. We will cover that in a session about digital skills as they are key to navigate also the digital transformation that are keeping us busy day in and day out, not just in the global South, also in the global North, on the whole planet. And with that, thanks again for joining and for being with us today. Thank you. Let me introduce this powerhouse panel to you. We have to the right-hand side Anna-Sophie Herken. She's a GIZ Managing Director. Anna, thank you for making time. Thank you. Yes, we keep our muscles warm. To my left-hand side, we have Manuel Moritz. He's a senior researcher of the New Production Institute. And his work focuses on developing new production methods, designing collaboration and innovation processes that integrate economic, ecological, and social responsibility. He's the expert for Fab City and open source hardware. Such a pleasure to have you. Thank you, Manuel. And last but not least, we have a rock star here on stage. I always call you a rock star, even our WhatsApp group, right? Deborah Maboya is with us. She's the head of operations and programs at TAI, Tanzania. You're a passionate advocate and change maker with over 7 years of experience. You will tell us more about the digital ecosystem in Tanzania, about all these bits and pieces that are not easy to develop, of course. We'd like to hear more about Oki, Tanzania. That's a place, ladies and gentlemen, that you need to make a big, bold exclamation mark after your note, because it's a place where girls get empowered through digital innovations, and you will tell us more about it. And your work truly goes beyond technology, so thank you for bringing your perspective here to stage. Deborah, this is your round of applause. Before we jump in, and you see the title behind us, the word, and it's another buzzword maybe, technology, innovation, scaling up, transformation, and also digital skills. And I was wondering, what is a digital skills? Because I hadn't had it in school, like mathematics or German or, poetry. What is a digital skills and what is the definition of it? Manuel, maybe you can give us an idea of what we should understand when we talk about these two words. Do we all, talk about the same thing?
So that's an opener, and you want to start with the elephant in the room first, right? So let's try to get it out of the way. So I was checking what digital skills are. Is there one definition? And it seems like there are hundreds, right? There are different frameworks what digital skills are and what not. Some subsume them in the context of 21st century skills, right? And I think this is probably also a part and a more comprehensive view on it. But for me, what those terms and the concepts and frameworks have in essence is basically creating pathways from learning to earning. And by earning, I mean basically using digital tools to solve problems. The problems could be in the digital sphere, the problem might have a physical component to it, but it's basically enabling people to creatively solve problems. And what you need to do with that is basically the baseline would be a digital literacy, right? Navigating the web. Obviously, we will learn a lot from you, Deborah, how that may work. So this is kind of the baseline. Next, you would start, we need to learn, right? Self-guided learning. The next step would be then, if I learn a specific topic, I frame a problem, I'm understanding what I need to know. The next question is, how do I reach out? How do I communicate with people? So communication and collaboration, offline and online, with diverse people, right? So obviously you don't have to know anything by yourself or solve anything on your own. Anyone probably already did it somewhere in the world, right? How do I get in touch? How do you communicate among and across cultures and disciplinary backgrounds, etc., right? And then finally, I think when you checked what has already been solved out there and how can you adapt it to your problem, then the question is how much skills can you actually also develop when it comes to solving the problems itself. So would you be able, or would you have to be able to solve an app or actually be able to use a 3D printer, etc. But that's the rather easy part then afterwards. So I think it's all about basically being able to solve problems for yourself and others. And this, in fact, is then also the basis towards entrepreneurship, right? So it gives you the opportunity. If you solve a problem that not only you have, but many in your community have or in your country have, there's probably a market around it. So then the aspect of entrepreneurship, I think when we talk about digital skills, is very important.
Perfect. Had you had a school lesson about digital skills when you've been to school or to university? Or where did you learn all of that now as an expert?
I think I never learned it. I don't even know if I have all of them. So it's a lot of learning by doing. It's project-based, right? So we see a problem. In the best case, it's a real-life problem. And then on the way, we teach ourselves, what do I need to solve this problem? Does it have a digital component? Do I need coding? Do I need design? Or do I need physical components? 3D printing, CNC milling, etc. So it's basically a learning process that is different all the time. But it's just a way of learning to learn, right?
It's a learning journey, as I also hear it out. Thank you for it. This is a clear definition. Anna, let's zoom out a little bit to the current developments when we look specifically into the Global South, on the African context, on the African continent. And this year's theme of Republica is Generation X, Y, Z. Maybe you can combine this topic, what comes to your mind of the Generation X, Y, Z, with the ongoing digital developments on the African continent within digital transformation procedures. You know, what is different from what you see in Europe, or what would you like to pinpoint out when it comes to Generation X, Y, Z, to the digital transformation on the African different contexts?
Yeah, perhaps just one thing, because while you were talking, Manuel, I thought, where does the definition of digital skills stop? Because I thought if you are management or a leader, if you work in strategy or HR, basically everything is a digital skill nowadays because it changes everything. So I was just thinking that, you know, while I'm on a leadership position, we very little think about what does it mean for us. So that was just, you know, while we were talking, I was just thinking, oh my gosh, I have to read more about this one. So coming to your question, Katie, I think when I think about the African continent, and I'm curious to hear from you then certainly, is I always have like three major thought lines. So the first one is demographics, and you mentioned it. Like 70% are younger than 25 years, and you have countries like Nigeria where it's like even, I think, more like 85%. So it's a huge demographic. It's a challenge and it's an opportunity. And also if you look at what it means for the workforce, it means just in the next 5 years, 230 million jobs on the African continent will require digital skills. So I think this is like the first part where we're discussing it both as something which is great, because you have lots of talented, young, inspirational, innovative people, but also it's a challenge. And then the second part is access and skills, and the divide that we see actually when it comes to digital skills. So I think this is really problematic. And also if you look at the numbers again, it's like I think 27% of girls have access to internet and have digital skills on the African continent, which again is also a problem in Europe, by the way. So I think many of the problems are pretty much the same. So I think this is sort of the second part that we always have to have in mind. And then I think the third part is, and we discussed it just, Katie and I, before we came, we thought the opportunity part. Because I think sometimes in Germany, a very sort of, you know, we think about all the risks that come with the digital transformation, with AI, and there are all these risks, and we have to take them serious. But then when we look at the Global South, and at the Sustainable Development Goals, which are like beyond reachable, there is so much opportunity when we look at digital innovation and solutions to achieve the SDGs, like through apps like yours, through like agriculture apps and all this. So I think these are like the 3 lines, and when you ask me what's different, I always feel like when I work with the Global South, I'm much more in the opportunity space, which I personally also like much more, so yeah.
Yes, we can do it mentality. I hear that, yeah. Thank you, Anna. Deborah, let's zoom in. Let's travel to Tanzania. And I'm a geographer, so I give you a little bit of a nerdy geography knowledge. A country in Eastern Africa, of course. You correct me if I'm wrong. You're testing me now. Borders to Kenya, Rwanda, Burundi, DRC, Zambia, Mozambique, and Malawi. Anything missed? No. Check.
No, everything.
What do we need to understand here in Germany, especially, maybe in the so-called global north, I mean, Europe in that context, what do we need to understand more about the status of digital transformation, about the journey of digital transformation of Tanzania that you can actually, give us to understand, okay, this is our context, this is in the ecosystem that we are working in?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very nice question. I was just reflecting my own definition of digital skills. And for me, it's just the pathway of opportunity for many people within our generation. Looking at that context of Tanzania, my own country, there have been ongoing development of digital skills transformation over the years, but still the need is very much great. I was just, when you were just having this conversation, it took me through when I was growing up. I did not have access to smartphone. When I reached university, it was when I had my first smartphone. And it was really very hard for me to navigate and really understand, even doing small things like assignments in the classroom. And joining an organization like TAI where I work, I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a group of young people who are very interested in discovering things. And one day, just in our room, we were just discussing, guys, where did we learn about digital skills growing up? Only few of us, actually, they were exposed at a young age. Majority of us did not know it until when they reached the university setting. And there we saw the need of us making the change and being a part of change so that we can be able to support our younger generation in the digital transformation aspect. So what we have decided to do at TAI, we have decided to engage and empower young people within our community, including young people with disability, not leaving behind the marginalized community, empowering them with digital skills and knowledge. First and foremost, through the Oki application app. It is a menstrual tracking application which help young girls to track their period, but more exciting, we have been able to embed digital skills topics within the application. Now, for girls who are able to have access smartphone, they can not only be able to engage with the application, but also access the digital skills to content. But moreover, how can we be able to reach to young people in the rural areas? The ones who are outside the formal education. So we decided to do workshop, in and out of school workshop, training session. And before this, we were thinking like, where should we begin? Sometimes we normally come up with ideas like maybe this is what they need. But have you gone and really asked the target beneficiaries what do they need to learn? So that is how we do it. We went and did co-creation with the young people, asking them, and it came to our realization, actually, the basic things are still of great need. I went in one of the school and I was asking students how many people, this was a group of Form 1 to Form 4, so it's around 15 to 17 years of age. How many people have access to smartphone? Only 3 of them raised up hand. And actually, it's not theirs, it's from their parents. And what I decided to do, we said, what do you want to learn? They wanted to learn how to navigate in Google. How can I be able to be safe online? There's a lot of things happening online. How can I stay safe? So we decided to do that thing within our team, developing digital skill topics like online safety, accessibility features for young people with disability, so they can be able to navigate and get the access they need.
Mm-hmm. Again, take us with you to Tanzania, into such a workshop, into, I don't know where you teach. Is it a school? Is it your space, a whole ecosystem where you maybe lack of infrastructure, but you are still going into the conversation with young generations? So how does it look like? How does it feel, such a training by TAI Tanzania? And how do you actually bring then the knowledge and the skill set with everything that it entails to these young hearts?
Oh, wow. It's always bring me joy when I speak about this. So majority of the workshops that we do them in school. And the ones who are out of the formal education system, and these are young people who they could have ever drop out to school, we do them school in the youth centers. So what we do, we could be in the just as a classroom setting. We have our own facilitators, and we love to be more intimate with our young people in the classroom. So we'll have a classroom of around 50 to 60 people, because we want it to be more intent. Not just speaking for the sake of speaking, but how can we be able to have conversation with them, be able to hear their feedback. And really, it will just be starting, we will start with the icebreaker. Okay, guys, let us stand up. Tell me anything that you would want to learn today. People will just raise up, I want to learn on this, I want to learn on this. And we would start the first question like Katie asks, what is digital skills? Do you know anything? Then
what do they answer then? What do they say? What's important to them when it comes to digital skills?
So I think for them, majority of them, especially if it is the first time they're hearing about digital skills, they'll say, I don't know. For the ones who know, they would say, actually, maybe it could be when I have a phone. That could be something to do with digital skills. If I have a phone, I can be able to go to WhatsApp, Instagram, then that's it. But majority of them, actually, they really don't know where to start. Some of them, they are using skills in their life, but they don't know if it is the digital skills. Very interesting. So having the conversation with them and having engagement session, we'll begin with just small details topics. For other country like Tanzania, we are still growing. So you can find even the topics that we engage with, we start for the beginning stage because of the ongoing technology within our country. So having conversation in small topics like how do you post your pictures online? How do you ensure that they're safe? Do you have a password in your phone? Those kind of conversation, which opens a Pandora box of conversations.
Beautiful. I told you she's a rock star, right? I'm right. Thank you so much, Deborah. We are diving into, of course, more of the workshop atmosphere and the conversations in a second. Manuel, when we talk about these conversations that are then, of course, becoming the tough skill set of digital skills, I'd like to turn to you and the conversation about the initiatives that we need, like Fab Labs. So for those of you who are not familiar with Fab Labs, maybe you can explain again what are Fab Labs and why are these also spaces, ecosystems where these conversations can start and where these conversations can grow and grow and grow into so much more?
So a Fab Lab is a fabrication laboratory. There is also the term makerspaces. Usually the term makerspaces is a bit broader. Fab Labs are part of makerspace, but not every makerspace is a Fab Lab. Let's not go into details here. It's a physical space. Let's put it like that. It's a physical space that can be stationary or on wheels.
In a school or somewhere else, or
you would find any form you can think of.
Okay.
Can be small, can be big, can be in schools, in local community places. It is mostly in libraries, for example, very interesting. You would find it in community centers, in tech centers. There are hundreds of forms you can think of. So it's a physical space where anyone has access, usually, so anyone can go there. And the magic that can happen is that actually anyone can go there and make almost anything physically. So
like cooking, everything?
You, Deborah and Anna, we could go to a Fab Lab and within a few hours we would be able to make a physical product or item ourselves. So the place is equipped with digital production technologies. 3D printing is probably something we all have heard about, but also other machines, electronics, soldering, etc. So also more complex projects. And it's usually tied to, and that's where the digital comes into the machines, it's tied to digital designs. So not anymore you need 2 years of vocational training to operate just one machine and one process. It's digitized. The training is digital, the tools, the software that you use is digital, and it's easy to use. So anyone, no background, can actually access that place, and within a few hours can start making their own stuff. And the interesting is, this is the physical representation of, and one lab is great, right? One lab in one community, just like you have it, you have the need in a school, right? You could even have a mobile fab lab, serving exactly those communities, right? Doing the training, but then also bridging the gap to the physical. Because many problems, also young people actually have a physical connection to it. So you could teach them even further based on the digital skills than the digital tools and how to use them to make physical stuff based on the needs that they have on the ground. This is exactly what we've been doing with GIZ in Ukraine, where we actually operated a fleet of mobile maker spaces that went to the people, right? People that not have access to means of production, right? That don't have access to workshops to use the machines technology. It can be craftspeople, can be young people, can be schools, can be underserved communities, or, for example, wounded soldiers, right? Who now need a new perspective. And that gives them the place to just explore new opportunities. I like the idea, Anna, of opportunities and what to do with it, right? So one Fab Lab is great, right? But many Fab Labs are better, right? So like in the internet, when in the early days there were, 3 computers connected or so, nobody knew what to do with it. There was no power of a network. But now these days, you would have more than 3,000 Fab Labs all over the world. And that's only Fab Labs and not makerspaces. Doesn't matter what differentiation is. Let's say there are 3,000 of those all over the world, and the number is...
How are they connected?
The number is doubling every 1.5 years. So it's exponential growth, right? And they are connected... there is not one connection, right? So there is a loose network of, for example, of a network which is run by the Fab Foundation out of MIT. So the Fab Lab came from MIT 20 years ago. And they kind of have a loose network. So you can sign up your lab that it would be shown on a map, right? Then there is an annual gathering of all the Fab Labs around the world if you want to join. But it's rather loose, right? So you have those 3,000 labs. Actually, in Africa, I think these days we only have like maybe 100 Fab Labs and 100 makerspaces, so we really need more of those spaces in different forms, right? But if you connect them, and the people and the makers, these are the people who are in these labs, so compared to software where we had the hackers, the makers are just the guys who add the hacker mentality towards the physical making, and they are online, they are in repositories, in online communities, on Discord servers. They are, wherever topics they are interested in, they are connected all over the world. And that's then the fascinating part where they actually make stuff and share knowledge just like in software, where there are communities to solve locally then problems, and the solutions would come from the digital.
So people come to the makerspaces, but also the makerspaces or Fab Labs, we use that both terms now, they are also coming to the people. You brought us also something, right? As a little bit of a digital cooking example.
Actually, any one of you who was not yet in a Fab Lab, so right behind this door, there is a Fab Lab area, and I invite any one of you to go there later, because they're actually also makers from Africa, they are makers from all over the world, and you see a broad range of products that actually can be produced in a Fab Lab, by yourself or for others, right?
Let's ask quickly the audience, do we have any makerspace specialists, experts, coming from a Fab Lab from a different country? Hands up. All new to the crowd. Oh, here we go. You will be run over afterwards. Don't worry. And of course, our panelists. Thank you for joining us. Manuel, what's in it?
So this is one of the most promising open source projects, open source hardware projects we find these days. And what is very interesting, it is a microscope, a digital microscope. And even the team and the core developer team is around here. So please also see them at their booth and have a look how that product actually works.
Do you need a hand, or shall I hold the microphone? Yeah. And it's not just decoration, it's really something that's working as well, right? It's just to clarify.
So obviously, the core developer team who is around, Julian and
here we go,
Joe,
another expert.
they have built this thing. And the interesting thing is it's a digital microscope. It's a microscope where 90%, so all the housing, all the coloring you see here in black, white, and gray, comes from a regular, $500 3D printer. You would find the files to make that online, and you are allowed to do it. So it's documented in a way that even laymen are able to make it locally with just a printer and a few hand tools. But with the license, which is similar to open source software, you are allowed to do it. You're allowed to study it, you're allowed to modify it to your needs, and you're allowed to even to distribute and sell it. So while this is an open source hardware project, and this is one physical representation, actually the community engages people all over the world to take it, make it, and sell it, right? So there is no central point of view. It's the digital documentation of that which makes it powerful. And in fact, I think in 70 countries, right?
Most of the early design was in collaboration with Tanzania, and the motorboard was designed in Dar es Salaam by Valerie Sanga. So
Wow.
it's a very Tanzanian project.
Thank you for clarification.
And the
Made in
interesting thing is, it's really low cost, right? So this is
Yeah.
around $300–350. You need some components like the lens and some of the motors, which we still have to source somewhere else. But basically, 90% is built locally.
Absolutely, thank you. I'd like to bring in Anna here because this is a beautiful example of how to leapfrog solutions, how to bring more change on a quicker pace into different local contexts from your perspective. Why do you need, or where do you see the opportunities of such open source fab labs, maker spaces, ideas to bridge the gaps? Also when it comes to the gender divide, the digital gender gap, to bring in maybe more girls, more young women into technical fields.
Yeah, I think these are great examples, and I was just impressed. I didn't know that. So, of what you can really do sort of on the ground, on groundwork, and what you can do there. And I think what's important is that you have to work on different levels, and that's what we do. So I think this is really important because that's where you sort of get the local context. And as you said also, I like that, you want to get the expertise from the people that use it at the end. And this is, for example, in GIZ, we are working in 120 countries, and that's what I always call our USP. We work on the ground. We ask the people on the ground what they need because they know best. On the other hand, I always think this is important, but it has to be sort of accompanied by more the macro level part. So when it comes to digital skills, and for example, we know the terrible numbers that, we just talked about, that there are very few girls actually enabled to get the digital skills. When it comes to AI, it's even worse globally. I think they're horrible numbers. Like, I think 22% globally are women working in AI, and then you think about all the bias that's built into AI, and you pretty much think that all AI is done by white male Silicon Valley dudes. I think that becomes even worse, and then you lack African data in there. So I think you have to work on that level too. And for one example that I think is sort of matching this nicely is that we just launched an initiative which we call the Femme AI Labs in Africa, that we are trying to educate female politicians, but also like female leaders, on what does AI mean, sort of on a political level, but also then breaking down to the local level. So I think it's important that you work on both, and then they sort of have to meet. And I have to say, with many of the things that we do on the African continent, I sometimes wish we would also do them here.
Mm-hmm. Deborah, I'm turning to you in a second, of course, because bridging the gender-digital divide is absolutely core to your heart. But I'd like to turn to Manuel first for what you said. How is AI now changing the Fab Lab network and the makerspace surroundings? What do you observe in that whole long period of journey of learning digital skills, empowering people in digital skills? How is now AI changing the ecosystem in a way that you can observe?
I think that there are two components to it. First of all, I think it's a large boost of creativity, right? So for problem solving, you just interact with your preferred AI, chatbot, etc. when it comes to actually coming up with solutions. And even there are these days text to design applications where you don't need to be an engineer to be trained on a digital design, right, of a physical item, but rather you talk to the AI and it would actually give you a draft of the physical, like a digital design of the physical 3D object, right? So it will lower the barrier massively also when it comes to the skills, software skills needed to actually design physical objects, right? And then another aspect is actually, and that's what we've been implementing in one of the latest machine developments we've been doing, which is a laser cutter where you can actually cut and engrave different materials like wood, acrylic, etc. And so usually if you have a design and you want to make it, you need certain software in between to tell the machine what to do, right? So first you need the design software, then you need the manufacturing software to turn it into a kind of a plan for the machine that it knows how to do things, right? So you usually have two softwares that you somehow need to be able to manage with. And that's obviously a barrier, right? Because it takes time to understand those. Then there are different software solutions for different machines. And now we've integrated all of that into the machine with an interface with the machine with an AI. So you tell the machine, what kind of a design are you looking into? Let's say for decorative reasons, you want to have a lion on your, on your cardboard or whatever. It would give you the design and automatically start a printing just like your paper printer at home, right? Just click one button, and anything you had to do before with a very complex tool chain of different tools you need is now integrated in one. And that will actually lower the barrier to innovation even more, right? So you need less skills to actually make physical products with new innovative solutions.
Great, thank you. Deborah, coming now, of course, to you. How do you use, when you are listening to Manu, how are you using in your context with Thai, Tanzania, or also with the Oki app, artificial intelligence, especially in conversation with the younger generation who are still needing training in regards of what is AI? How can I use AI in a responsible way? Where do I see maybe also the bias? So give us an idea of how you have the conversations about AI with the tools that you are teaching.
So a very interesting thing. So apart from the Oki application where we used to train girls on issues of digital skills in the school and the workshops that we do in and out of school, we are able to develop a portal. So we call Thai Academy Portal. And in this portal, when you enter, you'll not only be able to have a link to access the Oki application, but also you will find some of our characters. So one of the things that we also do at Thai, we also create animations. So we do the 3D animation, the comic books, and etc. So we have been able to integrate our characters into the portal, whereby you'll find a character, you can ask anything regarding to the digital skills, and they will be able to answer you. So there is where we have started in terms of how can we integrate it to make it more friendly, and young people who can be able to access now internet, they can be able to ask questions and get the feedback they need. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit more about Oki app, because some of you, or even I, didn't know what Oki app means and what it is. I mean, we are all wearing, hang on, where's my bracelet? Here. It's Menstrual Hygiene Day coming up. So Oki app has to do, of course, with menstruation, with breaking the stigma, with talking about period even louder. These are all hashtags that you will see on social media on Thursday, of course, with the Menstrual Hygiene Day. But tell us, what is Oki then? And how does it empower young girls and women?
So when you talk about Oki app, you really talk about how do we work on the digital divide that is happening in Tanzania and across Africa. In African context, in most countries, boys or men are more favorable in given opportunities than in girls. So Oki app comes to really breach the digital divide of the gender. And what Oki app does is the first period tracking application co-created by girls themselves in Tanzania. When I talk about co-created, it's an application which girls can be able to track the menstrual period, that is one. It can be accessible offline. Wow. With the ongoing issues of internet, imagine having an application that you can easily accessible offline. That is a win for us, for the girls that we're engaging with. But moreover, girls can not only be able to access sexual reproductive health information, but also digital skills information and engage with it. That is the beauty about this particular application. And what we have done, it's really, we have been able to partner with schools, whereby we have trained teachers on the use of application and the digital skills information which can be accessible in the application. Because in school settings, majority of students don't have smartphone. But what if they want to go and ask a teacher something about her menstrual health period? What if they want to ask teacher about a question regarding to digital skills? So that's why we need to train the teachers. But we went a step further. We have been able to develop an Oki SMS version so that we can be able to reach to unconnected girls. Girls who are found in rural area and they do not have the smartphone. They have just normal phones, but they want to engage with us through the Oki, through accessing information. So they are able also to do that with the Oki SMS. But also we went another step further. We developed the Oki desktop application. because now we have been able to partner with organizations who are also working in the sphere of digital skills. They are also engaging with girls. They have installed computers in the school, but they don't have the content. That's where we come in. We have been able to install the Oki desktop application, trained the teacher, trained our partners, and they are able also to engage with the girls through the Oki application itself.
What is the feedback of the girls that are sent to you via SMS or via the Oki app, you know, as one of the big faces, of course, of the Oki app? When you talk to the girls, what's something that they tell you?
You know, some of them, they tell us, when are you coming back? So that we can hear more from you. It's very interesting. One of the girl, I remember she called, because one of the digital skills topic that we also engage with, also how you can do business online, how you can utilize online platform to do business. And this is specifically for young girls who are out of formal education setting. She called us, this girl, she attended one of the training, and after 3 months, she called one of our coordinators saying, guys, now I'm making some money in Instagram. Thank you guys for the training you did 2 or 3 months ago. So it was really helpful. Another one actually shared with us. So for her, she went home and talked with her mother. So her mother have lower visual impairment, so she can see so much clearly. So one of the topics that we also trained her for is how you can be able to navigate accessibility features within the smartphone. So she went and taught her mothers also as well. And now her mother can actually utilize well her smartphone. Those kind of feedback. But also it goes much more, even for the ones who have disability, how they can use the talkback features in the phone. Simple things matters the most, and they help young people to be able to navigate in the digital world.
And how important is that to bring it up, of course, to the macro level, to use this beauty of digital skills, teaching and learning, but also to then form that to economic development for more jobs and for a higher production on the side, in a local context. Because one thing is to learn, but the other thing is what do you do with the knowledge and how do you then implement it in a business entrepreneurial solution and spirit. So the question goes to you from a macro development level and angle, but then of course also into the Fab Labs perspective again, Manuel. So first Anna and then Manuel, how do we combine then the knowledge, the solutions that are now created on a local level into a business at the end? Anna.
And that's a good question, because I think there are different ways. So I think on one hand, it's important that you work on the local level also, that if you sort of create the sort of sensitivities in local communities about digital issues or also digital sovereignty and all this, if you have this sort of groundwork, you create the pressure for the macro level to deal with it. So I think that's also important. And then on the macro level, it's just really important. And I always like numbers, but if you just look at AI numbers, you know, it's sort of like within the next 5 years, I think it's like the combined GDP of China and India plus that will sort of be added to the global economy. So again, it's the opportunity space, plus it's all the opportunities to leapfrog and find solutions on the African continent that, you know, otherwise would not find. So I think that's important to sort of, you know, make sure that people understand this. But then, again, you need to skill the politicians, but also people in companies. But it's the same here. I think we all have a very basic understanding of what AI is. And I think it's really important because you want to make sure that African countries, you know, they don't want to go the US way and they don't want to go the China way. Certainly sometimes, you know, we always believe our European way is sort of a nice sort of mixed balance, but they have to find their own path. But to find your own path, you need to make informed decisions. But it's the same here, actually. So I think this is sort of how it all comes together.
Manuel, how do we actually bridge then the gap from a solution, from a first seat, into a business perspective?
That's an interesting perspective. I like the idea of talking of levels, right? Because usually, and you really have to visit a makerspace, the bustling environment, the people, you know, fiddling around with technologies. It's just so fascinating to observe, right? Even if you cannot be part of it or don't want to. Anyway, so makers are great at making things. They're usually not that great talking about it and not even selling. So this is, you know, right, a different type of personality and characteristics you usually would need. So, for example, what we do at university sometimes is that we pairing teams of a business student and engineer or you know, design student, because you need both, right? You need a solution, obviously. If it's just for your own problem, you know, that's fine, right? But if you think there is a need for it, then obviously you need new opportunities. You need selling. You need I mean not selling by selling, monetarily, but selling the idea, right? Then it's more like startup. You need to be able to pitch to actually address the needs of stakeholders, right? Stakeholder management. So it's a completely new set you usually need. And this is, I think, where we need the help of organizations like GIZ, right? To be able to bridge the gap between local governments, right? Local initiatives, then from the grassroots level, bridging bottom up with top down, and somehow mix and transfer how, for example, initiatives like yours, like in Fab Labs, how they can actually, support sovereignty of a country and of African countries, right? So, there is a large need, you showed us the numbers, there's a large need and a large market opportunity for production in Africa for Africa, right? So you probably don't need, or hopefully you don't need access to Chinese markets to send your products who break down, you can repair them, right? So why don't we have opportunities and then bridging the gap to actually make African countries make their own product for their own needs and empowering them to do that exactly in this way?
So what would be a solution to that challenge of bringing the right people together? Because the makers, as you mentioned, are very good in making and moving and changing. So how do we bring in the business perspective? Do we need a new form of Tinder for maker spaces where people come together and matchmaking the right gaps together?
Nice idea.
Maybe that's an idea. Maybe I should pitch that to the maker space. Hey, but concretely and precisely, what are solutions maybe that you've seen that are helping in leveraging?
So first of all, I still think that makerspaces and fablets are still a niche, right? So only few people know about it. Remember how long it took us to understand how important open source software is? It's like 50 years, 60 years back then. Fab Labs and the maker scene has been around for 20 years, 25 years, right? So it's still a large gap of just knowing that it's there, right? And then the next step is actually making the connection to stakeholders, understanding that this is interesting for them. And one Fab Lab is just the outpost, right? Think of a network of Fab Labs. Think of small and big ones like a micro factory where you could more professionalize stuff and do it there. You might have mobile makerspaces. So I think bringing more people into the labs and make them aware of, and in the best case, for example, in school settings, in university settings, have interdisciplinary teams where, for example, then a challenge or just a project for the students of the business or the startup innovation guys could be, go meet a maker, find a solution, and, make a pitch out of it.
Anna.
I really like that idea of bringing them together, all the people together. And I think one aspect that we're actually also addressing very much at GIZ is also the question, how do you actually get the funding? And also how do you match sort of the private funding? Because we see that, and something that we do quite a lot on the startup ecosystems, because you have so many really innovative entrepreneurs on the African continent, for example, that are not only successful on the continent, but that bring solutions to pretty much all of us that we need. So we do a lot of pre-seed, early stage funding. But then you see a large funding gap. And I think this is also one thing. If we start to see sort of all these innovations also a bit from the commercial side, at least attract some private sector money, that would help a lot. And that's one thing that we also always try to find solutions for.
Would you say, because public money, of course, is becoming more scarce and scarce and scarce, and do we need to leverage more private capital for these solutions? Not just to leapfrog, but also to consistently and sustainable fund solutions, also after the startup period, in enabling and scaling up the business product in the end? Yeah,
it's actually one of the things we're just launching an initiative at the Hamburg Sustainability Conference, because I worked in VC before, and we always thought we did sort of very targeted investments in great solutions on the African continent, but it's very risky and it's not really, the matchmaking is also quite difficult. So we're trying to find more solutions because you need more capital, and you have these great unicorns on the African continent, but you need the money, and you need money beyond sort of the early stage investments. And again, I think this is where I also see a big part of the leverage solution, to get more private money in and work closer with the public sector.
But the risk perception comes in then here. Maybe we should also work then on the risk perception of the investors, right? Is that also a gap that we need to tackle more?
Well, first of all, developing a prototype and testing it with users in a Fab Lab gives us a very efficient process of learning whether it works or not, technically, right? You get feedback from users in the lab, basically, right? So you basically co-create also the product. So, you know, you would learn very early whether it works or not, right? But then there is another question, this is still an unresolved question, whether there are business models that are interesting for VCs when it comes to open source and the open paradigm, right? Because it's hard to scale. I mean, scaling with hardware is the hardest thing at all, even without open source. With open source, the question is how can you do it if there is no IP? There is no patenting, right? There is no IP related to it. So you cannot basically, you know, right, have competition and have a monopoly on a specific technology. So the business model perspective, and I think open source software has taken 30 years to understand how business models would work, but not in a traditional way. And still these days there are open source software companies that are highly valuable, or even companies that buy them for money, right? But with hardware that's even more different, right? Because, you know, it's economy of scale, right? And the question is, economy of scale would actually mean doing it the traditional way, which you don't want to do. So we also have to rethink, and I like the discussion of the SDG perspective, where we say, you know, do we really, I mean, VC money, they operate like that, risk and return, and we know that, but the question is, what's the role of the public? And is there a public interest also when it comes to public infrastructure and sovereignty of a state, of a region, of a city? And how can such a co-financing, co-partnership model look like?
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I think we're ready to open the floor, are we? Yeah. We can't see you because it's so dark. Oh, now we. Thank you, the magician behind the scenes. What are your questions? What keeps you busy? I mean, you are all experts in the field. You came here maybe for a reason, out of interest. What's something that is now circulating in your head? What is your thought about it? What would you like to share with us? Are there any questions from your side, or any details, add-ons? I see two persons here in the first row. We start with you. Please give us a quick introduction. Who are you, and of course, where are you coming from which background, and then your concrete question, and then we come to you in the third row. Thank you.
Thanks. My name's Andrew, and I'm the chair of a group that works with Manuel called the Internet of Production. And I've spent some time working in Tanzania. A quick anecdote that I was part of an engineering competition in Tanzania, and these amazing Tanzanian developers developed an app to help people with obesity. And the British judges from this institution from the UK were like, but is obesity a big problem in Tanzania? Like, we thought you had problems with food. Like, why? And the Tanzanian developers were like, oh no, this isn't for Tanzanians, this is for Americans. They really need help. And because they were already like looking to where the market is, right? So the talent's there. You talk about driving global transformation. You've talked about what that might look like practically. Could you paint a picture for us of what it might mean for society, for the economy, for politics even? You know, for the advertising industry, for the way supply and demand works, for relationships between the genders, whatever it might be. What does the future look like in 1 or 2 generations when this transformation has happened?
We draw a little bit of a utopia. Deborah, maybe you can start. What would you say? How different will Tanzania look like, feel like, work like?
I think the future of Tanzania, especially when we are talking about in the digital space, digital era, it all depends with us. In terms of, we need to form strategic partners and alliance, in terms of people who can be able to come together and really reevaluate what do we need in terms of digital skills as far as it's concerned to empower young people within our community. So it starts with us. The biggest challenges we normally get, we always come with perceptions. You talked about the issue we came with the application of obesity. Somebody from the government just saying that that is not our problem. Perhaps it is because research have not been done. We have not co-created and engaged with the people who really are the ones coming up with the solution, the community themselves, the people who are in need of these things. So I think it all starts with, if we all come together, analyze the ecosystem, the people that we need to co-create the digital skills that we need, and the application that we need to solve different challenges that are affecting our generation within Tanzania, then we can have a very good digital transformation within the future. We normally say that when inclusive is intention, then transformation will be truly transformative.
Beautiful, thank you for that picture. Anna, what would be your picture, also combining, of course, this new AI knowledge with politicians, female politicians? How will that change? What would be the picture perfect when politicians really know what artificial intelligence can do with their superpowers
question,
of making politics?
I was just thinking more specific to when you were talking on Tanzania, which, I'm not the expert on it, but I just thought when it comes to sort of the future, I think it would be really important that the politicians understand the importance of data and localized data. Because if we build the future on, let's say, on the codes and everything that we have now in the data, it will never match local circumstances. So it will never be Tanzania reality. It will, I don't know, again, be perhaps Silicon Valley reality. And I think to understand, there's so many interlinkages, which we all probably find hard to understand and grasp. So I hope that they have a more holistic view on what's needed on the data part, because I think it's 1% of data is stored on the African continent, and we can't build a future on that. So I think the education will lead them to sort of think about it more holistically. So I think that would be my wish, probably, rather. I hope a prediction, but...
Coming to your question in a second, so the microphone is already getting ready. But Manuel, when you think of this utopia, when it comes also to the advertisement agencies, maybe, which new campaigns do we have to see to understand the leverage potential of digital skills? What images come to your mind?
So, Fab Labs in Germany or Europe or more Western countries, it's more like, to most, it's more like a hobby, right? So, it's great teaching stuff, but it's mostly, fun projects. You do just another, smartphone cover, etc., right? So it's not that relevant projects we do there. What we see in Africa with many examples is they really make useful stuff there. And they know how to do it, and they know how to do it properly. And they know how to scale it in theory, right? So for me, it would be a very long-term perspective, interest perspective, because of that development and the need for local solutions that really matter, is actually that I might imagine that in 20 or 30 years, we can actually learn from Africa again what it would look like if there is a decentralized, distributed manufacturing system doing small-scale, locally individualized products for basically everything we do and use and consume around us when it comes to technology.
Great. Thank you, Manuel. Okay, that's a manifesto for useful solutions, of course. What is your question? Of course, who are you? What keeps you busy? Give us a quick intro.
Yes, hi, my name is Jonas. Thank you for your insights. I work for the Goethe Institute, and while I haven't spent time in Tanzania, I've spent quite a lot of time in South Africa. So a lot of the challenges you described are very similar to people in rural areas in South Africa. So I really liked specifically that you are developing an offline version of the app. You have an SMS version, because while there is access to data, mobile data is very expensive. So that's another part that kind of inspired me to also check for your future with the Okai app, if you have thought about reaching out in the Eastern African or the Southern African region, because I can see there is a solution. And there's already also people working on similar stuff. So I see great possibilities for networking for you.
Oh yeah, that's a...
Better, here we go.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the feedback. Actually, Oki is not only in Tanzania. It's in more than 6 countries. And I think I'll be happy to connect with you afterwards and really be able to share with you, to know specifically in the countries that you're most interested, so that I can know if Oki is there. We can also connect. I can connect with you so that you can be able to see how you can be able to support the girls in that area. But I think in terms of the future of Oki, we just want to go big. It is yet just starting. For instance, for the OK SMS, we just launched it last year on November. So, and currently we have over 2,000 users, and it is just beginning. We want to go to reach more rural areas and to be able to not only to get girls, but actually even parents who are interested to engage through OK application, but also with the desktop application. Right now, we have 5 partners who now we have installed the OK desktop application in the schools, but we are inviting more partners in Tanzania, and that is our mission. vision. Go bigger, make more impact, reach more people. Because as of today, we have been able to impact over 10,000 girls. But we want to do more this year again. So that is what we want the future of Oki looks like.
I actually have one question for you, Deborah. Do you also have you also explored as another persona type for the user of your app, fathers and husbands? Because I think it might be very interesting for them to learn. I think, it's really an issue. We have no clue how it works.
Oh, yeah. So we haven't really thought about it yet. But actually, one of the feedback we got from a session, we want first to start by bringing the parents together. Especially in Tanzania, as I said, majority of young people don't have access to smartphone. So they will rely to the parents' phone. But let us start to talk with parents in the parents' meeting engagements in the schools. So there's where we are starting currently. But I'll take your idea and reuse it.
Another idea. Is it now? Yeah, switched on. Perfect. Think bigger. Think for change. Think of moving and making. And with that, I thank you all for coming. Anna-Sophie Hack, and thank you very much for your insights. Deborah Moboya was with us. Thank you. And Manuel Moritz. And we are here for another minute or so. So please approach us for conversation, for exchanging contexts, because it's a muscle that we need to train. No solution can fly just by itself, right? So I think it's about connection and community. Last word from
Yes,
Manuel?
Please all go to the Makerspace and talk to the people and explore the projects. It's really amazing.
Every one of you has at least one question to the Makerspace. There is one question at the end. We are actually wrapping up, but are you an ambassador for the Makerspace, maybe?
Yeah, actually, I would like to invite you all to FAB25, which is the gathering you were talking about. In the beginning of July in Czech Republic, we are bringing 1,000 people from Makerspace, Fab Labs to Prague and Brno. So we can all meet there, and we can get more towards your discussions, all the topics.
Where do we have to be when?
It's in the beginning of July from 4th to 11th, and if you want to know more, I will have a talk about it in a home base at 1:45.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you for all your details. Post about it, because we need to spread the word. Be a change maker also in sharing these ideas on LinkedIn, on all the social media. Tag us along, but also approach us now for conversation. Thank you so much for being with us here. We really appreciate that you had time for us, and I'd like to be respectful with your time now, and that's why we are wrapping up. Thank you, all the best. See you soon. Bye.